awareness of those values which enrich and give significance to our lives. In this community of faith, may we discover also the communion of kindred spirits and the joy which comes from the sharing of our lives. In this time of worship, may our minds be open to new truth and our hearts be receptive to love. Welcome to this celebration of life. Whoever you are and wherever you are on your life's journey, you are welcome to join us here today. Come, let us worship together.
But we're going to do it anyway, because this is a message for all ages. So stretch your imagination, if you will, and imagine that I'm Anderson Cooper, about to enter this audience and ask you some questions. And the first question is for the entire congregation. How many of you sitting here this morning were born Unitarian? Could you raise your hands? One, and this little one in front, right? Yes, okay. Okay, then being Anderson Cooper, that raises some curiosity about what religion did you come from? What religion were you raised in that eventually caused you somehow to wind up a Unitarian? So we're going to check around. Annalie, what religion was your household raised in as a kid?
Baptist.
Okay. How about Susan?
Methodist.
Methodist. Anybody else?
No religion.
No religion. Okay. Some folks are unchurched. Jane?
Methodist.
Methodist. I think we're getting a majority.
Catholic.
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 Catholic. Harris. Catholic. Kanta.
Catholic.
Catholic. Uh-oh. The Catholics are beginning to outweigh the Methodists.
Very liberal Methodist.
Very liberal Methodist.
Very conservative Catholic.
Very conservative Catholic.
No religion.
No religion. Perfectly good answer. Gail?
Methodist.
Methodist. Methodists are creeping up again. Donald?
The Watchtower Society.
Okay. Bets?
Military chapels.
Military chapels. You were an Army brat? Oh boy. John?
Congregational.
Amanda?
Catholic.
So you see, we have a wide variety of people who have come to Unitarianism, and that's why Reverend Thomas's sermon title this morning is "You Don't Have a Prayer."
Hi, I'm Phil Norville, and I serve on your board of trustees. I got a call from Larry the other day and asking me to share some of my recollections from Live Oak over the past. After Gloria and I married in 1976, we started attending the Unitarian Society of Santa Barbara. 4 years later, our son Garrett was born, and our attendance increased. 4 years after that, we moved out past Winchester Canyon, and our attendance decreased. When we visited the fledgling Live Oak UUC in Isla Vista, our son was about 5, and we knew we'd found a closer and more intimate congregation to call home. The wonderful minister, Betts Winnicky, who's sitting right over there right now, whom many of you know. Garrett enjoyed the RE program, which had a lot of kids around his age. They had many fun and educational classes and activities, and I especially remember all of those annual Christmas pageants. For several years, Live Oak had a weekend family campout during the summer along the Santa Ynez River. Once we even stayed at the Live Oak Loop of the Sage Hill Campground. During the warm days, the kids and adults would swim and play in the slow-moving, shallow river. There were great hiking trails in the hills above the camp. In the evenings, the musical and storytelling talents appeared. Larry and Sarah Bishop brought violins. Aletha brought an accordion. Others brought guitars, harmonicas, and even a few kazoos. It was a grand time, loaded with laughter and friendship. I'd love to see it revived this summer. After being at URC, University Religious Center in Isla Vista, for a few years, St. Michael's Episcopal Church allowed us to use their facilities. After a year or so, we were ready to move to our own campus, which was a farm. The farmhouse is still in use, now housing our kitchen and the fireside room, childcare, and staff offices. But the sanctuary was built from the ground up as Fellowship Hall. Then, finally, this new sanctuary was built, and we held our first service in December 2008. Here's another tradition to revive. Several times we had a silent and live auction as a fundraiser. It was always a riot, with Bet's husband, Peter Haslan, who is also here today, as the auctioneer. The youth group brought a continuous stream of yummy finger foods. It really was fun for everyone. The road that this beloved congregation has traveled since I first entered, rejoiced, and yes, came in, has not always been smooth and easy, but it has been well worth the effort. You truly are a wonderful, generous, and caring community, and I am truly proud to call you my friends.
We give thanks for these living joys and sorrows, those which were spoken and those which were left unspoken. We are thankful that they may now become part of our own lives. And may we never cease to remember and be glad that out of all the world, we can share our lives with each other in this place with these people. Annie Förster was the minister of my first congregation back in 1990 in Seattle, Washington. Over the years, she and I have kept in touch, and one day she sent me a prayer. And the idea was, this is something you can do among Unitarians who don't pray. And so this is called, Let Us Create a Prayer Together. At the center of the gathered community dwells the holy. And we are the prayer, each and all. One by one, we come into this place whole and broken, commencing and concluding, laughing and weeping. And soul by soul, the prayer begins. Spirit of life and love. Two by two, we greet one another, smiling, nodding, speaking, embracing. And in relationship, the prayer continues. Spirit of life and love, where we meet is a sacred place. Moment by moment, the circle builds, pulsing like 200 heartbeats. And we fill the circle with our breath, and we inspire, and the circle fills us with wealth, and we are inspirited. The prayer rises like our very own reading together. Spirit of life and love, where we meet is a sacred place. and we are inspired by one another's presence. The circle will not, cannot go on forever, yet this circle will never die. What each of us finds here is what we are not, and it makes us whole. It gives us strength to go out into the world beyond this holy community, beyond this sacred space, to begin yet another prayer. Let us pray. Spirit of life and of love, where we meet as a sacred space, and we are inspired by one another's presence. At the center of our gathered community dwells the holy. We are the prayer, each and all. We are the prayer, each and all. And we say, Amen. The first meaning has to do with an incident I encountered some years ago when I was involved with an interfaith group in Vancouver, British Columbia. The group produces a calendar each year, and in that calendar it represents many faith traditions, including the Aboriginal spirituality of Canada, the First Nation spirituality there, the Baha'i faith, Buddhism, Christianity, of course, Hinduism, Islam, Jainism, thank you, Judaism is part of the group, Shinto, Sikhism, Wicca, Zoroastrianism, and Unitarianism. When they were putting together their first calendar several years ago, called the Reverend Philip Hewitt, who was a longtime minister at the Vancouver Unitarian Church, a big presence in Vancouver, BC. And they asked him how he thought the Unitarians should be represented in the calendar. They wanted to know, for instance, what are our holy days? What days of the year do we celebrate as our own way of being holy in the world? You know, holidays are holy days. What are our holidays? And then maybe we have some prayers that we could add to this calendar. And he had to inform the calendar makers that not only don't we have any holy days, we don't have a prayer. And only after the words came out did the larger message reveal itself. Anyway, we are the only faith listed on that calendar, which still comes out every year, by the way, which does not have any holidays or prayers, but at least is listed there, and a little bit is said about us. And that's the way they do things in Canada. When I first heard this story, I was really a little startled. I never thought about it. I guess it's true about those holidays. We don't really have any recognized holidays. Somebody said, well, April Fool's Day. And I said, well, that really doesn't say a lot about who we are. And I don't think anybody in the crowd knows when Ralph Waldo Emerson's birthday was. So, you know, we just don't have any. But we do pretty much recognize the holidays of other groups, particularly Christianity. We always have Christmas and Easter and some of the other things. And last week we had Easter. And we sometimes celebrate a Passover Seder or something like that. And nowadays there are Wiccan groups, and earth-based spirituality groups in many UU congregations, and they have their holidays. But I want to look at the other meaning of that, which is Unitarians don't have a prayer, and that is we don't have a chance for survival. We don't have a prayer to make it through. In the incredibly diverse landscape of religion in America and the world today, some people think that UUs may be out of the running. Some people say that we may be irrelevant to what is going on in the world. After all, in the vast ocean of religion around the world. And in fact, there are more Roman Catholics in Southern California, well, and especially LA, than there are Unitarians in the whole world, or ever have been in the whole world. And so we might ask ourselves, first of all, why are we just a speck in the thing? When we got started here in America, Tom Jefferson, good old Uncle Tom, he said, you know, before this generation dies out, Unitarians will be the #1 religion in America. Thomas Jefferson said that. He was sort of a Unitarian himself. He said, this is the way it's going to be here in America. The American experiment is really all about the same thing as Unitarianism. And of course, Tom was wrong about that. And in fact, we've gone the other way. And in fact, each year, our percentage, per capita percentage of people who call themselves Unitarians is less than the year before. And so not only are we not advancing into, some people say we're actually receding into the background, and that as a matter of fact, Unitarians don't have a prayer. And many of us wonder about that. Not only about, do we really have a chance to make it in the world, but also, do we really have a prayer? And does it make any difference that we have a prayer? Does having no prayer make us somehow less than a genuine religion? You know, we don't have the Lord's Prayer. We don't have the Kaddish. We don't have the prayers of the native people here in America. And does that mean then that we're not on the same level as those other groups? Do others look at us and say, those people need to get their act together and grow up into a real religion? Actually, there's a lot of Unitarians that say that. The truth, of course, is that we have decided that we don't need those things. In our never-ending scrutiny of our former selves and of our former spirituality, as was demonstrated in today's story, where how many? 2 people in the whole congregation were born as Unitarians. We are a group of come-outers, people who've come out of somewhere else and have come in here. And so when we think about our former religious selves, our former spiritual selves, we have sometimes redefined most every part of what most people think of as traditional religion. In fact, many of us don't like the idea of calling Unitarianism a religion at all. It's that, oh no, we're not like those people. We don't want to be like those people. We don't need a prayer. We don't need any holidays. Some of you who were raised in those traditional faiths know about holidays and specific prayers. In the Roman Catholic Church, there's a holiday just about every day of the year, celebrating somebody or other or something. And then you have the Lord's Prayer, and just about all Christians in the world are aware of the Lord's Prayer and can say it. And I remember being in Europe on a sabbatical trip in Italy and Sicily and Greece. And everywhere I went, I just knew that there would be the Lord's Prayer and they would say it. And it was everywhere. And now we know that there are over 1 billion people in the world who know the Lord's Prayer by heart. It is a true prayer in that their heart knows the prayer. The trouble for us UUs is that when many of us hear the word prayer, they automatically, irrevocably think about God. They think that prayer is necessarily something that is addressed to some kind of higher power. And that's why so many of us UUs have trouble with the concept, since we are not so sure there is any kind of higher power out there somewhere who's listening. In fact, many of us have trouble imagining that there's anything out there, anything that is beyond us, outside of us, any kind of other. When liberal religion was dramatically influenced and changed by the great humanist movement near the beginning of the last century, and for almost 100 years afterwards, many Unitarians more or less gave up on God. And as many of us know full well, God actually died somewhere around the middle of the century, I think. It was on the cover of Time magazine. God is dead. And we know that for humanists, there really is no need for God. And in fact, God gets in the way of any kind of real progress that the human race might make. So we don't need to pray anymore, since we consider prayer to be a dialogue with God who does not exist. And that's not the end of the story, because some of us think that prayer may be something else besides a dialogue with God. And even then, some of us say there is someone listening. Of course, we modernists tend to scoff, but let's try a little experiment. To begin with, and to make this experiment work, you must suspend your disbelief. Now, that phrase I would like to claim as my own. However, it is not my own. It is from Samuel Taylor Coleridge, when describing the process by which we can enter the meaning of a poem. He was writing a literary criticism piece, and he said, when you get ready to enter into the realm of a poem, you must suspend your disbelief. That is, you must let down your guard and say, okay, what are you doing? What are you saying? Where are we going on this? I'm willing to listen to whatever it is that you're saying and doing. And so you have to let go of your own strong and strict beliefs in order to enter the world of the poet. And luckily, after you have read the poem, you can resuscitate your disbelief and go on with your life as a non-believer. You can walk right back into it any way you want. So let us assume for a moment that you actually do believe that your prayer is being heard by God. You have to suspend your disbelief to do that. But let's say that God is the master of the universe. Now, what would you say in such a prayer? What would you say if you were actually talking to the master of the universe and believed that? It may be hard to imagine such a thing, but if I actually believed that God was listening to my little bitty itsy bitsy prayer from me down here, a nobody, if I believed that there was a God listening to that prayer, you know, I would be pretty serious about what I would be saying. I would be concerned with really important things, the most important things. And I would attempt to discard all the trivia and all the naive Santa Claus wishes and all the pettiness which normally takes up so much space in my own life. And I would gather together all my senses and my sense and completely focus, shaping my entire self into a pure resolve. And I would count the moment as an extremely precious gift, a precious time not to be wasted or desecrated. And it would be a holy time, my prayer, a sacred event requiring all my being's participation and reverence. And that's what a prayer is, I think. And the existence or non-existence of God probably has not much to do with it. After all, it's not for God's sake that I'm praying. It is for my sake, because as I'm gathering together all the really important things about my life, God has nothing to do with that. What has to do with it is I am searching with every particle of my body to come up with what really matters in my life. My children, my spouse, my home, and my community of faith. The people that I know walking down the street. Maybe even I pray about the politicians that are running the country. Maybe I pray about crazy people like North Korea and Iran and Washington, D.C. But whatever it is would be what really mattered to me. And that would be my prayer. You know, you've seen the bumper sticker that says prayer changes things, but a far more correct statement is that prayer doesn't change things. When it works, prayer changes people, and people change things. And that is pretty true. When I pray, because of the effort it takes to bring together all that is important and sacred and holy in my life, when I pray, I am changed. And if the prayer works, I will set about changing the environment all around me. Prayer is more than asking God to run errands for you. And here's what I think. There are many forms of prayer, perhaps as many as there are people who pray. I personally think that everyone sitting in this room is a living prayer, because it is inspired by the most sincere and honest and important feelings of spirit in everybody's life. We all live a prayer every day. There is a traditional form of prayer which is addressed to God, and maybe one that is subject to interpretation. Another form of prayer is evident in Buddhist religion. Prayer is a form of recognizing the now and all of its manifestations. It is sometimes called mindfulness. Prayer is a recognition of where you are right now in this moment, and the value of your life, and what is not of value in your life, and what you want to hold on to, and what you want to let go of. This is the kind of prayer that does not seek to get something. It only wants to find an awareness of where I am right now, and in that sense is something of a confession that it is saying, which is the original meaning of the word confess, is to say out loud, to speak out loud. And so it's not necessarily speaking of one's sins, but of one's condition. I just dropped in to see what condition my condition was in, said Kenny Rogers and the first edition, long before most of you were born. This is an important thing to do, I think. Let me tell you about one of the ways that I pray. And yes, I do pray. I pray when I'm on my bicycle. Where is Wilson? There he is. Okay. I pray when I'm on my bicycle. At first, I rode a bike, and nowadays I mostly ride a bike in a gym, but I sometimes ride out on the streets. But when I first started riding a bike, I wanted to do something out of the, I wanted something out of the experience. I wanted to lose weight. I'll just tell you. That's why I did it. And I soon realized that there were other benefits to exercising. And after a moment or two on the bike, I realized that I seemed to enter another form of consciousness. Maybe even what has been called a runner's high. Do you know what that is? You ever heard that expression? A runner's high. Only this is a biker's high. And most of the bikers that I know actually do get high, but this usually in a different way. All right. Sometimes I begin to experience my reality on the bike, as being something different, and my thoughts seemed to be organized differently, and sometimes they were on their own power, their own cycle. And I always try to let go, to suspend my disbelief and let it happen, just to see what will happen. And I eventually realized that this altered state of mind was something like what happens in prayer. And one day, I decided to take my church directory, to take the directory with me to the gym, and I put it on the handlebars. Here was a list of all the people in the congregation. And I would start going down the list of names, and the people in the congregation, and I would pause at each name while I was riding the bike, and each family, and I would really think about them, and I would wonder, how are they doing today? How are these good people doing? I think I remember that she said she had a cold, and that the kids were not healthy either. For what reason? I wonder how they're doing today. And I go to the next name and wonder if the people were happy and in a good place, or are they struggling today? Maybe they're having trouble with the rent. And I'm not sure that I was praying for these people, but I was earnestly regarding them and considering them and hoping for them and wishing goodness for them. So did this exercise do any good? Did it accomplish anything? I don't remember anybody coming to me and said, you know, the other day about 10 o'clock in the morning, I suddenly felt this thing come over me, and I never heard anybody say anything like that. And so I'm not sure the exercise ever really helped anybody if it was praying that I was doing, except me. It really helped me. There was something that was created, a bond with the people in the congregation that would strengthen the way that I can be with them. And God didn't have anything to do with it. So I don't know, but I like what Albert Camus said about all of this. He was a very philosophical and actually I think a very religious writer. He said that we should live in our absurd world. He was an absurdist, an existentialist absurdist. He said we should live in our absurd world as if it all made sense. As if it all makes sense. Even if it doesn't make sense in a traditional, rational way of thinking. And it's like Coleridge with the suspension of disbelief. It turns out this makes a great big difference in the way that we pray. And even the way I live my own life. I live my life as if it makes sense. It live as if it has meaning. I don't know that I can prove that it has any meaning. I don't know if I can prove that those words on the bicycle, thinking about people in the congregation, will ever do anything for anybody from now on. But I can live as if all of that is true. And really, can you think of a better way to live than that? Can you think of a better way to live than to say, I believe that there is goodness in the world, and I'm going to live my life as if that is true. So just to let you know, sometime or other, I'll be praying for you. And I want to tell you that I don't mind being prayed for myself. So if you want to do that, go right ahead. I'll gladly accept it. And who knows what the power of the mind and the soul have. We've only begun to understand these things, having been caught up in the scientific method of thinking about the world. But now when we think of quantum physics, who knows exactly how the world is flowing and how the world goes. Some years ago, I used to perform marriage ceremonies. And I don't do that now because I can't get married. The day that I can get married, if you want to get married, I'll marry you. I'll do it, but I'm not going to do it now because I'm very committed to the stand on marriage equality. But I used to do marriages, and I always did a part of the service which was about holding hands. And this happens right before they say their vows, and it's a tense and emotional time. The couple is about ready to make a public declaration of their promises to one another, promises which are meant to last a lifetime. Very important words, very important sentiments. And this is serious stuff, just like a prayer is serious stuff. And it is this point that everybody begins to realize this is where the weeping begins to take place. It is a sacred moment. It's a moment where the great powers of the universe seem to come together in one point, in one place. We've often made the comparison that what happens in a wedding is like what happens when people become part of the congregation. There are vows that are said, vows which describe the nature of the relationship with the people, with each other, and with the church. This morning, I would like to ask you to reach out and hold hands with the people next to you, even if you have to reach across the aisles. And just calmly and with a spirit of reverence, reach out and hold on to one another. And I will read to you a prayer, which is what I say to people who are about ready to be married. No, you're not getting married. This is before the vows. Please pause here for a moment and feel fervently and completely the hand offered to you by each of you. Feel its warmth and its life. This person's hand is an extension of your individual self, just as is your mutual regard for one another. Cherish this touch that you now feel, for it comes from the life of another person. This is a holy moment. Be sensitive to its pulse. Seek always to understand and respect its rhythm. For now and always, remember to value this genuine intimacy, which only you can offer to each other. In the name of all that is holy, and all that is good, and all that is right, we say, Amen. And now let us sing the prayer for this house. It's on page 1 in the hymnal. It says, "May nothing evil cross this door." But the original song was called Prayer for This House, and let us sing. Scott? May nothing evil cross this door, and may fortune never pride about these windows in the Lord, and rain go on.
And now we come to a special time in our service. Before we leave our worship service today, it's important that we meet any guests that may be here. If you're comfortable, we invite you to stand and tell us your name, where you're from, and if you've brought a guest, feel free to introduce them. How about over in this section over here?
Please rise and hold hands once again.
Sorry, that's
The benediction comes from the Middle Eastern poet named Hafiz. The earth lifts its glass to the sun, and light is poured. A bird comes and sits on a crystal rim, and from my forest cave I hear singing. I run to the edge of existence and join my soul in love. I lift my heart and grace is poured out. An emerald bird rises from inside of me and now sits upon the beloved's glass. I have left that dark cave forever. My body has blended with the divine. I lay my wing as a bridge to you so that you can join us